Trump administration's actions undermine both our national security and our intelligence and our protections of the whistleblowers, more than both. This Thursday, the acting DNI will appear before the House Intelligence Committee. At that time, he must turn over the whistleblower's full complaint to the committee. He will have to choose whether to break the law or honor his responsibility to the Constitution. On the final day of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, when our Constitution was adopted, Americans gathered on the steps of Independence Hall to wait the news of the government our founders had crafted. They asked Benjamin Franklin, "What do we have, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin replied, "A republic if you can keep it." Our responsibility is to keep it. Our republic endures because of the wisdom of our Constitution, enshrined in 3 co-equal branches of government, serving as checks and balances on each other. The actions taken to date by the President have seriously violated the Constitution, especially when the President says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. For the past several months, we have been investigating in our committees and litigating in the courts, so the House can gather all the relevant facts and consider whether to exercise its full Article 1 powers, including a constitutional power of the utmost gravity, approval of articles of impeachment. And this week, the President has admitted to asking the President of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. The actions of the Trump presidency revealed the dishonorable fact of the President's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. I'm directing our 6 committees to proceed with their investigations under that umbrella of impeachment inquiry. The President must be held accountable. No one is above the law. Getting back to our founders, in the darkest days of the American Revolution, Thomas Paine wrote, "The times have found us. The times found them to fight for and establish our democracy. The times have found us today, not to place ourselves in the same category of greatness as our founders, but to place us in the urgency of protecting and defending our Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic." In the words of Ben Franklin, to keep our republic. I thank our Chairman Nadler, Chairman Schiff, Chairman Nadler of Judiciary, Chairman Schiff of Intelligence, Chairman Engel of Foreign Affairs, Chairman Cummings of Oversight, and Chairman Cummings I've been in touch with constantly. He's a master of so much, but including inspectors general and whistleblowers. Congresswoman Richie Neal of the Ways and Means Committee, Congresswoman Maxine Waters of the Foreign Financial Services Committee. And I commend all of our members, our colleagues, for their thoughtful approach to all of this, for their careful statements. God bless them, and God bless America. Thank you all.
Madam Speaker, never before has the President been convicted by the Senate. What does this accomplish if the Senate doesn't convict?
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reluctant no more, saying it's the constitutional duty of the House of Representatives to move towards an impeachment inquiry of President Trump, with harsh words for President Trump, saying he seriously violated the Constitution, a betrayal of the oath of office, a betrayal of national security. John Carl, they are going to move.
They're going to move. That sounded like a Speaker of the House not simply beginning the process of impeachment, but deciding that this president deserves to be impeached. George, she said violation of the law twice, as you pointed out. She said seriously violated the Constitution and betrayal of his oath of office. That sounds to me like she is making the case not simply for the inquiry, but for impeaching this president.
Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice Correspondent. Let's take a step back and look at this whistleblower complaint that the Speaker cited right there. This was a complaint filed with the Director of National Intelligence back in August. The Director of National Intelligence decided not to turn it over to the Congress, as she said, as they believe is required by law of the Democrats. And that has been what precipitated these reports that came about the phone call to the Ukrainian president.
George, you're exactly right. The key thing to remember here is that the Inspector General for the intelligence community looked at this complaint regarding that phone call and perhaps other matters and determined it was credible and of urgent concern. He then wanted to transfer this information, this complaint, to Congress for review. The Justice Department and the acting Director of National Intelligence said he could not do so. He sharply disagrees, and that's part of why we are where we are, George.
That's where and we know that it deals at least in part with this phone call, this July 25th phone call between the president and the Ukrainian president. And Pierre, the president has now said he's going to release at least he said he's going to release a transcript of that phone call tomorrow.
We believe that he is going to, at least that's what we're hearing, that he's going to release that transcript tomorrow. But, George, there are other elements to this potentially. We have heard from our sources that the person who filed this complaint may have heard some of this information secondhand. So who did that person hear it from? Where did that information come from? So there are other people involved in knowing what the call was about and the events surrounding it. So that is key as well, George.
Presumably that is something that we looked at in impeachment and an impeachment inquiry now to be conducted by 6 different House committees. Terry Moran, I want to bring you in for this. Terry, you and I both covered the Clinton impeachment about 20 years ago. That moved quite quickly. The formal inquiry started in October. You had just a couple of months of an inquiry. They moved to a vote.
That's right, about 4 or 5 months from soup to nuts in that impeachment inquiry, because these things have a momentum of themselves, and you can feel it. Since this story broke, a sense, in particular among those majority maker Democrats, those Democrats elected in 2018 from marginal districts, many of them won by President Trump, quite reluctant to move towards impeachment. There's something about the allegation here, if borne out by the evidence, that is just deeply disturbing to anyone who's taken an oath to the Constitution, it seems, at least on the Democratic side, this sense that it is an abuse of office for the president to have done what he did if the evidence bears it out. And I think the dam has broken, as John said. And it could move fast. To
enlist a foreign government to help investigate a political opponent. And Terry, just to look at the history of all this, only 3 previous presidents had an impeachment inquiries. Of course, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton impeached but not convicted by the Senate. Richard Nixon resigned in the face of almost certain conviction in the Senate.
That's right. It is the nuclear weapon in the Constitution. And the American people have always, from the beginning, had an understanding of how profound it is to overturn a presidential election. We have never impeached and removed a president from office. Nixon resigning in the face of smoking gun evidence and his own unwillingness to fight it. But it is really the ultimate sanction in the Constitution, one that the American public must be brought along to agree to. At least that is what the history certainly shows.
I want to bring our senior congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce, in on that. And Mary, as you've been reporting, Nancy Pelosi had been reluctant because she didn't believe the public was yet supporting impeachment, didn't believe you would get a conviction in the Senate. But clearly these new revelations have changed her mind. And now she's decided to go about it not by setting up a special committee, but as she just said, leaving to the 6 committees of jurisdiction in the House.
Yeah, and George, there is still a huge political risk here. The Speaker is making it very clear. Look, she is putting her full power behind this, but it doesn't even pass the test that she has set up for herself. She had said all along, through months of hesitation here, that she needed to have the public's buy-in and support from Republicans. It's not clear that she has either of those things. And just now I tried to ask the Speaker that, saying, look, an American president has never been convicted by the Senate. What is she hoping to accomplish if the Senate won't convict here? But it is very clear, we have seen in the last few days, especially just in the last few hours, that this is a very different set of conditions. Speaker Pelosi speaking about this as an issue of national security. Remember, she's an intelligence person at her core. You heard her just saying that in her statement. And in speaking with Democrats, they feel that unlike some of the other issues, some of the other allegations against the president, that this incident, that these revelations are ones that Democrats feel they can clearly convey to the public, that they can get them on board with this. This is not without risk, though, for Democrats, but it is clearly a risk that Nancy Pelosi now feels is worth taking.
And George, it does appear, you know, we know Nancy Pelosi knows how to count votes. I mean, she never moves without knowing where her caucus is going to be. We've seen more than 150 Democrats on the record supporting an impeachment inquiry. The number likely to climb quickly now.
Yeah, George, right now you have more than 2/3 of House Democrats who say they support this move. And I think it is worth pointing out that this didn't happen in a vacuum. Speaker Pelosi has been involved in this breaking of the dam that we have seen over the last several days. She was in consultation with those moderate Democrats, those key freshman Democrats in those swing districts who came out overnight and essentially gave Nancy Pelosi the political cover to go ahead and take these steps. She's been in close contact with the chairman and the chairwomen of the committees leading these investigations. She knew exactly where her members were, and now she is following in what they want to see happen here on the Hill.
Mary Bruce, thanks. We got the first response from the president. Just tweeted out a moment ago saying, such an important day at the United Nations, so much work and so much success, and the Democrats purposely had to ruin and demean it with more breaking news. Witch hunt garbage, so bad for our country. John Carl, we see those words, witch hunt. That's what worked for the president, he believes, politically during the Mueller investigation. The question is, can it work here?
He said it over and over again regarding that special counsel investigation. I think this feels different, and I think that, you know, talking to people very close to the president, he said earlier, just before Pelosi came out, that they keep telling me this would be good for me politically if the Democrats impeached him. That is not what the president believes personally. He fears this. He does not want to see
He
this.
still has strong Republican support. There's no question about that. But a surprising vote in the Senate just late this afternoon, 100-0 vote in the Senate asking for that whistleblower complaint. Normally the president, who had not been wanting to send that over, could count on Republicans to try to block it with him. Mitch McConnell let that vote go.
It was simply a sense of the Senate, so it's non-binding but important symbolically. This was all 100 senators saying that the whistleblower complaint that the Department of Justice had blocked, that the White House working with the Department of Justice had blocked, that it should be sent over to the intelligence committees.
Okay, John Carl, thanks. Momentous day on Capitol Hill. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has decided to open a formal impeachment inquiry of President Trump. We just saw President Trump's first response. There will be much more coming up on World News Tonight with David Muir. I'm George Stephanopoulos in New York.
This has been a special report from ABC News.